I had a student, this was years ago, I had a student who would sit right here in the front row, and he played a gong. Not like a real one. He'd bring a gong. That would be, if you bring a gong to class, an actual physical gong, and hit it, it's a free quiz.
Every single time, or?
I want to say yes, but at least once. But he had like a recording, like on his phone. So when class started, as soon as I hit the recording thing, he would hit the gong. Like that was like the opening bell for class. Shut up!
That would have been the perfect moment for a gong.
The perfect gong moment.
Moment's gone.
Well, I'll go ahead and announce this now, then we'll talk about it more probably next class. So I leave for India a week from today in the evening. So we'll have class Tuesday, we'll have class Thursday. Then I'm in India for 2 weeks. Recruiting grad. Nah. We still have class. Originally, because I'm 14 and a half hours ahead, so originally we were actually going to have class at normal time, and I was going to be here. But because I don't necessarily want to trust hotel internet for class, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-record a lecture on YouTube. It'll probably be shorter since we're not having like back and forth, me asking questions and stuff. So I'm thinking they're going to probably be like 20 minute or so classes, and then you'll have homework assignments associated with it. You'll still have class, you'll still have homework, but you'll be able to watch the lectures on your own time. You won't have to show up to the physical class meeting time. Make sense? I'll still have access to Slack. I'll still have access to text messages, all that stuff. You might get weird response times from me depending on, because it's actually weird. It's 14 and a half hours ahead. Isn't that a weird? Yeah, it's like some weird thing. Yeah.
I thought North Korea was the only one that was half hour off.
This is Hyderabad, India.
He's going. That's what brothers do.
Because Vietnam was 12 hours. Vietnam is 12 hours. Like
yeah, so this is the Far East. This is out there. 20 hours in the air. To go to yeah. Apparently it's cooled off quite a bit. It's like 95 now. Yeah, it's winter has begun. Is I think what they have really bad air pollution there apparently. So you like when it's like during the summer, it's like 110, but with the greenhouse effect, it feels like 140.
Oh.
wow.
Yeah, so it's a warm place. But I'm going with the international. It's not just vacation. Yeah, middle of the semester, I'm just gone for 2 weeks, people. Yeah. Plus, I don't know that you go to India for vacation. but in any case, this is through the international office. We're recruiting for our MSIT and Masters of Computer Science programs and trying to create feeder relationships with some universities. And unfortunately, that means we have to go at the same time that they're in session, which means we're in session. And it's a thing. But in any case, we'll still have class. You'll still have homework assignments. You just won't have to physically show up to class, but you will be expected to watch the lectures. You will be expected to do the homework, ask questions. I'll have access to Slack and all that stuff. So
You just bring all the class.
do you want to go to India? See, my it's like Freudian, right? My wife didn't want to go. You have to get some crazy shots. I have to get typhoid, cholera, Japanese encephalitis, rabies. They have a problem with wild dogs and wild monkeys.
Wait, don't the rabies shots suck? Like, aren't they like?
Oh, that's not even the bad one. I think the Japanese encephalitis is the bad one. There's one I saw a video of them giving. It doesn't even look like a needle. Like it looks like one of these the gun thing that has like a post coming out the end of it, like they use for slaughtering cows or something. I mean, the needle thing, the thing that's supposed to be a needle looks like it's the diameter of a dime.
my
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if they're injecting it into like the bone marrow or something. I don't know how far in this thing's going, but well, that means you have to get inside of a bone to get to the marrow.
He goes through the bone into the chest.
Yeah.
Through the underarm and the chest.
So that one might be an interesting shot, assuming it's a shot. I don't know. Might be something like do up your nose or something, or maybe up somewhere else. Who knows? I'm not exactly informed on this, so I'm just going to show up, and the doctor's going to do what he has to do.
Yeah, you'll just show up and you'll give it a shot.
That one.
But yeah, so I'm looking forward to the aggressive wild monkeys. They sound like the most fun. They steal sunglasses and hats, backpacks.
Just get a video.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to steal the Diego backpack from you.
It's just true. And the thing is, these aren't like, you see in the movies, like Indiana Jones, the little tiny trained monkeys that sit on people's shoulders. It's not those guys. I mean, these are like big monkeys. Like with alpha males and stuff. They're like climbing all over your hotel, and they'll kick in windows.
What?
They get into your stuff. You might wake up at 3 a.m. with a monkey tearing apart your bed. Which would be just the greatest story. I was debating. Most of you have met Mr. Gonzalez at some point, right? Yeah. So I was debating. I haven't decided if I'm bringing him or not, because I don't want him to get stolen by a rabid wild monkey.
That would be a hell of a story.
It would be a hell of a story, but then Mr. Gonzalez would be gone. So which is
He'd be a legend. He'd be a legend.
so what happened to Mr. Gonzalez? We're still searching. He was stolen by a monkey in India. Yeah.
That's a lit, man. You should catch like a cockroaches, wrap it into like a present box, and give it to the monkey.
So I should have like offerings for the monkey. I should give him you said a cockroach?
Yeah.
So you want me to put a cockroach in a present box and give it to the monkey? I mean, this sounds really specific.
Because we have a monkey accent in our country too. That's what my mom did.
Your mom gives present box cockroaches to monkeys?
Yeah. We just paid it.
This explains a lot, really, actually.
They actually have something similar in Milan, I think.
Well, I think it's that part of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it makes you think about, what was the name of the movie? It was like Contagion or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it all started with like this one monkey that's all these people started dying. Yeah.
I think
Is
it's
that-
28 days later.
No, it's not that. If it's not Contagion, it's something else.
Well, I mean, because in 28 days later, it's a group of people freeing monkeys, but they've been infected with the thing. They get bit and become crazy zombies.
Yeah, but that's a newer movie that I'm talking about.
Oh, this is an old
Yeah, I think it's called. I really think it's called Contagion.
Is that the one with the wife dies first?
Yeah, she's like a medical doctor or something like that.
Yeah, it was from like a pig, I think.
Maybe, but there was a monkey that was in the movie that they had to find patient zero. That was the original source.
No, I think you're thinking of the movie about the monkey with HIV back.
Yeah. What was the name of the movie? Oh, that is the movie. I really thought it was called Contagion.
Yeah, that movie's from like 2011.
Oh, it's newer. It's older than that. The one I'm talking about. All right. So, anyways, yeah, India, rabid monkeys, all that stuff. Okay. Homework assignment was to write a function, takes in a string, creates a new string that is that string in reverse, and returns that string, Luke. Returns it?
You should read what I have submitted.
Is there commentary?
Kind of.
Is there a profanity? Those are always the funny assignments when somebody interjects profanity into the Bible homework
The Bible.
to see if I read it.
Is it Outbreak?
I think that's it.
That's the one, Outbreak. It's 90s something, right?
Yeah, 1995.
You just looked up the Crazy Monkey movie.
So were any of you things in 1995?
No.
Yeah. I wasn't even
You were a thing?
I was in concert.
You were like one? You were two?
I wasn't born.
That's what I mean. You weren't a thing yet. We weren't things. I was already teaching.
Really?
Yeah. Man.
You're too old.
I know, it sucks.
Thanks for saying it.
Thanks for saying it. If I got a really good deal on my flight, so flying over there, so it's a 20-hour flight, so I figured, okay, well, the school will pay for, economy. My size, economy is going to be a little tight for 20 hours, especially whoever's sitting next to me. So I decided to get first class. And so I paid the difference. So like a round trip ticket, British Air from here, from Chicago to Hyderabad is like just under 10 grand. I got it down to $3,500. It's pretty good negotiating, right?
Yeah.
So good. And then I used points on top of that. So at the end of the day, I think they paid me $50. I had to come out of pocket with some, but it was. Okay, so let's write this function. Let's just get rid of all these.
You're so weird.
What? This is coming from the put a cockroach in a present box and give it to a monkey. And you're calling other folks weird. You're just weird, Austin. Here, have a present. And just last class, she's handing out mystery cookies. Oh yeah, no, this one didn't have ants.
Oh.
Yeah, get it straight. Huh?
That's right.
I know. Her feelings are very hurt. All right. So we're going to have this guy's going to be static. It's returning a value, right? So it's going to return a string. We're going to call this guy maybe reverse string. It's going to take in an existing string as a parameter. You can name it whatever you want, but whatever you call it here, that's how you have to refer to it inside of the function. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a brand new string. So we're going to call this guy string. I'm going to call it answer. We'll start this guy off as the empty string. You named it the same thing?
Yeah.
That's because you learned how to program from me.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to call this guy answer. And now I'm going to create a loop that's going to go through every single character of my string in reverse. Now, do I have a function available to me that allows me to extract a single character from a string?
Yes.
What function is that?
As that character.
Charat, yeah, charat. Now, the S dot part would work in this case, but if this guy was elephant, for instance, it would be elephant dot charat. Okay, it's whatever you've named your string here is how you reference that instance method, because instance methods are called how?
An instance.
Using an instance of the class in which the method was defined, right? So you use the calling string. So in this case, it might be elephant. Well, in fact, we're going to leave it as elephant because I don't want to have to retype it. All right. So what we're going to say is we're going to have a for loop. We're going to start the for loop at the last legal position in elephant. What's the last legal position in elephant? Elephant.length minus 1 for int I is equal to elephant.length. Catch up. You can do it. Minus 1. We're going to keep going as long as I is greater than or equal to 0. Because we also want to include bucket 0. That's the very first character in that guy, right? And then each time through, we're going to say I is equal to I minus 1. We've not looked at I plus plus I minus minus yet, have we? Huh?
Python we never done this non-Java.
Okay, well, I'll review it real quick here in a few minutes. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. So this takes I on a voyage from the length of elephant minus 1 all the way down to and including 0, subtracting 1 each time. And what am I going to do with that value of I? I'm going to use it to extract a specific character from elephant. So to get a character, I'll say elephant dot charat I. All right, so this guy right here will boil down to a single char. And that char I want to put into answer. I want to concatenate onto answer. So I'm going to say answer is equal to answer concatenated with. So I was testing you. And so 1W or 5? All right, there we go. Answer is equal to answer concatenated with elephant.char at I. Now, how do we know this is the concatenation operator, not the addition operator? At least one side's a string. So since one side of this guy's a string, it will be the concatenation operator. Which side's the string?
Both.
Left side.
Both.
Not both.
Answer.
This is a string.
Oh,
What kind of animal is this guy? He's a char. Yeah. So that's actually a good example here. So which is under the hood an integer. It's a unsigned 16-bit integer is a char. So if you glance at this side, you might say, oh, well, that's a string because elephant's a string. Well, we're using elephant to use his char at method to get a particular char primitive type. So that guy right there ultimately is a char primitive type. So on the right-hand side of the plus operator, we have a char. On the left-hand side, we have a string. Therefore, the plus is the concatenation operator. Make sense? So we'll say answer is equal to answer, whatever answer currently is, concatenated with a character. We'll keep spinning through that for loop over and over and over and over again. And as soon as we exit it, we should have built up our entire string inside of answer. So we'll go ahead and return, Luke, answer as a string. All right, we'll return that guy. And now I'll do a quick example here. I'm going to go ahead and do this. I had... It's probably a message from Luke on Slack with profanity in it. Go ahead.
Message for me.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
I think this is something that maybe I have issues with homework. So the return needs to be, is that technically outside of the for loop?
It is, but it's not technically, it actually is. Yeah. This lives outside the for loop because the for loop ends right here with that curly brace.
Okay, I think I tried to put it in the for loop, so what happens when you do that?
Okay, well, so if you had answer in here inside the for loop, return makes a method immediately end. Right out. So what this will do is this loop, even though, let's say elephant holds hello. So we're expecting it to go through 5 times. The very first time through, we'll concatenate on the O onto answer, and then we're going to return the string containing O. Method's over. It's not going to loop through again because we killed it off right here. But notice also that this guy currently is not happy. Why isn't it? So it's legal for me to return answer in here, but the function's not happy. Why not? Go ahead.
There's not a return outside of the for. So
because I've advertised that I'm returning a value, I've told Java I will give you a string. For loops are what are called pre-check loops. What does it mean for a loop to be a pre-check loop?
Repeats only a certain number.
No. That is true about loops. What does it mean for it to be a pre-check loop? Go ahead.
It does the conditional before actually runs the argument.
Yeah, so it asks this question, this Boolean expression here, before it even executes the body of the loop once. So for loops and while loops execute 0 or more times. So the punchline is I've advertised that I will definitely return a string here. Yet, as I currently have it written, I only situationally return a string. I only return a string now if I happen to get inside of this for loop. Does that make sense? So there are circumstances here where I would not return. So the return is incorrect here because of the logic we're trying to accomplish, but the return is also not enough for Java to count on me always returning a value from this guy. So we kind of have 2 issues with this. Does that make sense? All right, so start off with the empty string, spin through our entire given string in reverse, so from the end to the beginning. Each time through, tack on the current character we are looking at. Finally, when we exit that for loop, we should have tacked on all of the characters. Go ahead and return answer. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to say, so this guy, is this a class method or an instance method? We're looking at the method's definition here. It's a... Somebody else. Somebody else. Class method, how do you know? Static. So when we look at a method being defined, if it has the word static in it, that means it's a class method. How do we call class methods? Using the name of the class in which the method was defined. What's the name of this class? Driver. So we're going to say driver dot reverse string, and let's go ahead and pass it maybe S. All right, what will the output of this program be?
Nothing.
Good. Output of this program is nothing. Why is it nothing?
Because we don't print it.
Because I'm not doing anything with it. Yeah, I'm not printing it in this case. So if I run that, now this isn't an error currently, right? If I run this right now, I'm defining all programs begin and end with main, right? So what does main say to do? It says define a string, done. Define another string, done. Call my reverse string method, passing it this particular string. What does reverse string do? S will come in and it's going to be called by a string named elephant inside of this method. It's going to go ahead and do its little logic stuff. Ultimately spit the answer back out. So this guy right here will boil down to what kind of value?
String.
A string. And what am I doing with that string?
Nothing.
What am I doing? What am I doing? What I have highlighted right here will boil down to a string. Am I doing anything with that string right now? I'm not doing anything. So this is a perfectly legal and acceptable program that has zero output. Go ahead and run it. No output. If I want to have some output, I can either print this guy directly, or I could store the result, string result, put that into a variable like that, and then I can print out that variable in case I want to use it more than one time. I can print it directly, but then I don't get to use it again. Or I can store it, and then I can print it, and then I potentially could use it again after that. All right, so now my output should be hello in reverse. All right, that makes some sense? All right, so I'm going to write another version of this guy. So we're going to say static string, reverse string 2. This guy will take in a string elephant as a parameter. And I'm going to give you a constraint here. So we're going to say string answer is equal to the empty string. And then I'm going to write a for loop for int I is equal to 0, I is less than elephant dot length, I plus plus, I equals I plus 1. I'll remind you of the plus plus thing here in a few minutes. All right. And then ultimately, I'm going to return answer here. How do we, using this as our constraint, this is the for loop you have to use. How do we build answer in reverse? Not these two.
I just change the position.
Yeah, you're right. Let's see if somebody else gets it. I want to ultimately build this guy in reverse. What logic do I put in here to build whatever elephant holds in reverse if you're forced to use a for loop that goes from beginning to end? What I'm trying to do here is separate the for loop from what we write inside the for loop. We happen to be applying this I to our for loop. Well, we happen to be applying the I from our for loop to strings. But you don't have to do that. Right at this point, I've written a for loop that gives me all the numbers between 0 and the length of elephant minus 1. Go ahead.
You add the string to the char instead of the other way around.
All right, so we'll say answer is equal to elephant.charat I concatenated with answer. Is this guy still the concatenation operator? Because at least one side is a string. So now I'm building it in reverse. So rather than walking through the string backwards, I'm walking through the string forwards. But what I'm always doing is I'm tacking the current character that I'm looking at onto the front of the string instead of tacking it onto the end of the string. So I'm going to end up building it in reverse. Make sense? So we'll call this reverse string 2. We should get the same result. So there's our hello backwards. Make sense? Any other possible solution you can come up with for reverse string 2? What if I said you had to say answer concatenated with elephant.char at something? So now that's your constraint. It's like well, you little puzzle box things, right? Okay. With the dead cockroach in the middle of it.
Surprise.
I'll come back to you guys in a second. So I want the exact same output. Here's your constraint. You have to go through the string and forwards. You have to build the string forwards. But now we need to have the, we want to have the correct logic inside here to ultimately get us a reverse string. Any ideas?
Can we only put stuff inside of the parentheses?
Yeah, only in here.
Okay.
All the magic has to live inside of this opening and closing parenthesis. So again, we're seeing how we are applying that variable I to the string. The for loop itself doesn't link it to the string. What's the very first, if I'm building this guy this way, what's the very first character I want?
Last one.
Which is, what's the last legal position? Length minus 1.
Yeah.
So the length of elephant minus 1. And then the next one I want is the length of elephant minus 1, minus 1,
Yeah.
then minus 2, then minus 3.
Yeah.
Do I happen to have anything that's going to be a 0, then a 1, then a 2, then a 3? So I could say elephant dot length minus 1, which is the last legal position, right?
Mhm.
Minus I. I wouldn't encourage you to write it this way, but it will work. So this is saying always start off at the last legal position, then subtract from that whatever the current value of I is. So the first time through, I'm going to subtract a 0. Then I'm going to subtract a 1, then a 2, then a 3, then a 4, then a 5, so on. So there's my hello in reverse. Make sense? Which one of these do we like the most? This is probably the one we like the least, right?
Yeah.
So does that mean this is a bad solution? No, you'd much rather have a kind of a weird correct solution than a really efficient incorrect one. It's like, look, this thing is just streamlined. I didn't even use a loop. Didn't even use a loop. Didn't take parameters. Didn't even return a value loop. But
It just rinse it out.
I mean, it
just works.
it's just streamlined. This is efficient. All right. So this guy is perfectly fine. Probably the solution that makes the most sense, since we are thinking about building a string in reverse, is to walk through our string in reverse and then build it forwards. Make sense? But any of these are acceptable. They all are ultimately doing the same thing, just at various levels of problem solving. But I also want to point out with something like this that there isn't a right answer. There might be many right answers. There's plenty of wrong answers. Okay? But you can pull off a lot of programming stuff with different approaches. Now, one thing you don't want to do, and if you're already doing this on your homework, I encourage you probably then to get with a study group. You don't want to do your homework through the trial and error process. Okay, where you copy some code in and then you just start changing it until it works. Like, well, this isn't the right output. Well, what if I do this? And then you just change it and then it works and it's like, homework's done. and you have no clue why it works.
Just
It just works. That's good. That's not the point of homework, right? I don't care if you turn in. I mean, I care a little. I care. I'll find out in the exams if you're learning stuff from it. Right? I'd much rather you work on something for a long time, turn in something that doesn't quite work, see the solution in class, like, oh, I get it. Learn from it. Next homework assignment's a little bit easier, at least no harder, since we're probably introducing something a little bit more complex. And then you get to the exams, and now it all kind of makes more sense to you. You know, if you're getting your correct solutions based on complete trial and error, well, trial and error is not going to be real good to you on an exam where you have to just write something with a pencil and hope for the best. You get to run it one time when you hand it in.
Like trying to be perfect every time you run a program.
Yeah, but that's not. These are really, really, really simple little functions at the end of the day, right? Many of you are going to be challenged by them right now because we're beginning programmers. Okay, but you're seeing here in class that writing these is not a major challenge. I didn't like sit up last night memorizing the solution. All right, I'm coming in and doing this just cold. All right, so these aren't hard problems to solve. You're still practicing those skills. And the only way you're going to practice, well, the only way you're going to get that practice is by actually writing stuff that ends up being incorrect and then fixing it. But whenever you make a change, make sure the change is at least based on some sort of educated guess. Hopefully over time, your educated guesses become better guesses. But don't just start randomly changing stuff until it works. You know, that's kind of like the doing a Rubik's Cube, where you don't know the pattern of how to do it. You just keep turning it and turning it and turning it until still something good eventually happens. Yeah.
Mr. Apple.
That would actually be a pretty interesting program to write, because I mean, randomly it should eventually work. If you wrote a program that manipulated a Rubik's Cube and it just made move after move after move, but each move it made was a random move, so you pick one of the rows and one of the columns and turned it. And you just did that billions and billions and billions of times until the thing just happened to get to his final form.
Then it changes it again.
And then do one more twist. But technically I don't know how many times you'd have to randomly change it, but
many times.
Yeah, it would be many times. Yeah,
That's interesting.
How many times do you think it takes?
So that would be like a really impressive thing, because I mean, do any of you know somebody, or can any of you do the Rubik's Cube like really like quickly? Huh?
My cousin's done it in 8 seconds.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Like, there's like an algorithm to it. You know, there's like these moves you do in a certain order, and you can get it done. So it's always interesting when you they do it in movies sometimes to like kind of show somebody as being a genius, right? Where they're walking around, they're doing it with one hand, not even looking at it. I saw some guy, I think it might have been America or British Has Talent or something, where he was juggling Rubik's Cubes. I think he juggled 3 or 4 Rubik's Cubes and was solving them while juggling them.
What?
So he's juggling 4 different ones. It might have been 3, might have been 4, whatever it was. And every single time he caught it, he would do a single move. But, he's doing this in real time. I mean, this looked like he's just juggling. And then finally he stopped and he had 4 solved Rubik's Cubes. See, that's almost as impressive as like me in like a mall just breaking into like those breakdance things when you're like doing those, like you're defying gravity. You see like a really big guy able to do things that they shouldn't be able to do.
Flips.
Yeah, you just have a whole tumbling routine.
You have a tumbling routine?
All I have to do is go up to the top of a staircase and fall forward. That's my tumbling routine. But they do like, they probably has a YouTube video of something like that, when they have, how they'll have like, these professional athletes or something that dress up like old people. Mm-hmm. And then they go out and they're like dunking basketballs, like the Uncle Drew thing. And there was another one where this guy's like a power lifter, And he dressed up like his old guy. He's wearing sweats and stuff. And he's going out to like Muscle Beach.
Yeah.
And he's doing like these deadlifts, like just crazy stuff. And some giant guy there is getting ready to do something. He's like, "You mind if I give that a try?" Something. They're like laughing at him, and he totally does it. That's what they need to do. They need to take some gymnastics person and just pat him, right? Just make this guy look 400 pounds. He's just out there just doing crazy stuff. The things we find entertaining. And then have him get attacked by a rabid monkey with a cockroach. He wouldn't even open the gift box. He would just eat the thing with the... So he's got this gift box with a cockroach in it in his mouth while he's attacking the fake fat gymnast guy. If somebody comes into the video at this exact moment, that would just go viral.
They seem much like they see squirrels every day.
That's the kind of the impression I got. Yeah, that they're just
you see a whole gang at one time.
Yeah, with like the alpha male, and he's like giving him instructions. Yeah, like that's his battalion.
That sounds like a
don't piss them off.
It's like, you just see these monkeys stream out.
Plank in the building.
I'm just hoping that given my size, I'm not viewed as prey. I think monkeys will kind of eat whatever. I might not be, I'm not an expert, but I've been told they're aggressive.
Don't look attractive in your
Don't make eye contact. They probably somewhere there's signs up that says "Don't feed the monkeys," so I'm going to feed the monkeys.
They won't give you rabies.
Yeah, I might lose weight if I got rabies.
Why'd you go a little crazy?
Oh, maybe is that yeah.
You're already there, so I
Yeah, that's right. I think we've kind of rounded.
You can be a Tarzan.
Be a what?
Tarzan?
Be a Tarzan? Well, now we're back to we got to get a skinny guy in a suit. All right, here you want to
get a skinny suit for you?
I don't think it works. I don't think it works that way. Just massive compression. Just quicker, take the picture.
It was time for being tall. Just bring your
Yeah, stretch. Yeah.
Oh, turn off the wall to Photoshop for you.
We'd have to Photoshop it, I think. Yeah.
Cool.
So you want to hear?
No.
You want to hear a funny? A lot of you know I have a form of autism called Asperger's syndrome. That's why I'm kind of weird. So I had a funny Asperger's event last night. It was pretty funny. I take my pills at night for these brain seizures that I've had it for years and years. So I mean, it's funny at this point. But certain things kind of set me off. Like I don't listen to music. I listen to audiobooks. I can't. So like certain sounds like agitate me. And we were going through the mail last night, and America's Got Talent or one of the singing. There was a singing thing on, and this person was not. I don't like music anyways, but this was about the worst I could hear. So I get all agitated from it. I'm sitting in my chair listening to or working on going through paying some bills and stuff like that, and I'm getting all agitated, but I don't really realize it's happening. It's because I'm like focusing on my computer. And this is happening on the TV. So the noise is coming in, agitating me, but I don't know where it's coming from. So when you get to this point, then I start having like the brain seizure stuff because I take my pills at night and they had worn off, I'm guessing, from the previous night. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, I'm flopping around a little bit for a couple seconds. And then I could have gotten out of the chair. I kind of realized what's going on. It's the sound for the TV. So a normal person, this kind of connecting it to what we're talking about, there's different ways to solve the problem, right? Might get out of the chair, walk over, get the remote, and turn the TV off. Okay, that's not how I decided it should happen. I didn't want to get out of my chair. So my chair is next to our big couch. So I dragged the couch over to me. So I'm rearranging the furniture in the living room, just dragging it from a seated position until I get to the remote, and then I turn the TV off and put it back. So and my wife had left the room for 2 minutes, right? She ran to the restroom or something like that because we were going through the mail together. So she comes back and she's looking at us. What happened? So I didn't like the show. And she's dealt with me. I mean, I've been with her for years and years, so she didn't even ask any follow-ups. Like, oh, makes sense. Plus, it's bad now because, like, if I start I don't get agitated very much. I'm on good meds now, but if I do the flopping around thing, I'm not like foaming. It's it's just kind of like that. It's just like so bugged. You're just bugging you. Probably seen some of that stuff in the movies. She laughs at me. Just mean.
Your partners.
I know. Nobody else would take me. Plus, I save money on airplane tickets because she's little. My wife's like 5'4", like 110 pounds. I don't even have to buy a ticket for her. I just put her in my carry-on. That is an advantage of being a big guy when traveling. You know how there's like maximum sizes for like your carry-on? I have like this giant backpack.
Oh, really?
But it doesn't look that big on me. Right? So that must fit. So I'm basically carrying in like these like hunter backpack things and made to like drag deer out of the woods. How did we get off to that? Where did we first make our left turn here? Oh yeah. All right, so this is all your fault with the gift box with the cockroach in it.
No, because you're talking.
Now that sent us down a dark path, V. All right, so full circle. Do strings make sense? I give a quiz on them, like something about monkeys and cockroaches. And then you put a concatenation sign in the middle. I'll accept it. All right. So I want to do a couple of test things here, just so I can introduce the plus and the minus stuff. You've seen it before, but in the 200 class. So I'm going to say int a is equal to 5. Then I'm going to say system.out.println a. All right. So output of this program should just be 5, right? Even though we have all these functions we wrote down here, we're not calling them inside main. So right now I've defined a single variable and I'm printing it out. So output of this guy is just going to be 5. All right. So now I'm going to make a duplicate of this line. So now I'll have 2 5s. 5, 5. Okay, so now we want to look at, I can increment a. I can say a plus plus. And this is the same thing as saying a is equal to a plus 1 as far as the ultimate result. Okay, so it's kind of a shorthand for that. All right, so now I'll see that 5 will become 6 right here, and then I'll print out 2 6s. Similarly, I can say plus a. I'll also get 2 6s. Do we see the plus stuff in 200, or is this all new?
We didn't find that. Only behind it though. We didn't talk anything before.
Okay, so this is new when you see it before it?
Yeah.
All right, so then this is new material then, that's fine. All right, so I put plus a in front of it, and it had the same output, right? So when we're looking at it like this, we might say, oh, well, it's just you can just do whatever you want, right?
Why does it work like that?
Well, because we're doing on its own line like this, which I always suggest you do, our ultimate result is the same. But I want to show you how it could be different. So if I say a plus plus here, because you can say plus plus in line like this. So I'm going to say system.out.println a plus plus, and then system.out.println a. Our gut feeling might be, okay, this is going to print out 2 6s. It's actually going to print out a 5 and then a 6. It's going to print out a 5 and then a 6. Now we got to say, well, why? Why does it print out a 5 and then a 6? All right, so now I'm going to show you the alternate real quick, and then we'll talk about it. If I change this to plus a, Now it'll print out a 6 and a 6. So their behaviors are not identical. They're very similar. Correct. It did work different. When I said A++ versus plus A here, a different order of operation did occur. But because I was not immediately using the value, it didn't matter. At the end of the day, A became a value that was 1 larger than it used to be. Now I'm seeing, when I use it in line, I'm seeing I get 2 different results, depending on whether I put the plus before or I put the plus after. And let's talk about why this is. So this is the rabbit monkey slide. All right, so we'll do the plus and similarly the minus operators. So these are called increment and decrement operators. So let's do something like A is, I'm going to put it actually before this so we have both values. So int A is equal to 5, for instance. Let's say something like that. If I increment, if I say A++, this boils down to the current value of A and then increments and changes A to be 1 greater. So when the plus comes after the variable, the incrementing happens after we get the current value. So when the plus comes after, the incrementing happens after. Plus A, this increments first and then boils down to the new value. Both of these will ultimately change the value of A to be 1 greater than it was before. The difference is whether or not, if we're using it immediately, whether or not we get the current value of A or we get the incremented value of A. Now, what I'm telling you, just like, go ahead.
So like for the first one, if you do right underneath that line, you do like A times 2, the answer will be 11 then, right? Because it finds the final value of A and then.
So here, let's do it out here at the code. So what do you want me to do here?
It's like if you do underneath that like A times 2.
Like right here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
The answer will be.
It'll be 12.
Okay.
But this won't permanently change A though. If I print out A on the very next line, it'll still be 6. A times 2 does not change the value of A. It just multiplies the current value of A by 2.
Okay. I was just thinking if like, I was just trying to like figure out how the plus works.
Yeah. This guy will have a permanent impact on A. A will always be 1 greater than it is from this line forward, whether you have the plus before or whether you have the plus after. If you use it directly like we're doing here, which I do not encourage you to do, but you will sometimes see code where people have done this. And every now and then it does make life a little easier. Every now and then. As a general rule, if you want to increment a variable, just do it on its own line. Then it doesn't matter if you use A++ or ++A. Because you're not using the value in real time. So you just know that after that line, A will be 1 bigger than it used to be, regardless of how you got there. Make sense? But if you are using it directly like this, Because the plus plus comes before the variable, this will increment first and then boil down to the new value. If the plus plus comes after, it will boil down to the current value and then increment. If you're going to use the values immediately. Make some sense? Minus minus works the same way.
Okay.
So certainly as beginning programmers, I would encourage you to never write something like this where you are using the plus pluses or the minus minuses before or after inside of another expression. Always put them on their own line. If you want to increase A by one value by one, put that on its own line or its own section in the for loop. That's where we see it most often probably. And that way you know that the value will be one greater regardless of how it got there. Don't use the value directly. Once you get to the point where you've been programming for a while and you know exactly how this works and you want to use the value directly because it benefits you in some way, saves you a line of code, whatever, then you can do that, but know that you have to understand how the behavior works. All right. This falls into a pretty similar category to whether or not to use curly braces with if statements or loops. Technically, they're not required, but I've said it's never wrong to use the curly braces. It's never wrong to use a block statement. Some of you have seen the responses on homework assignments where you've turned in something that functions, like if you have a while loop or a for loop that functions without having the curly braces. It just so happened to work because you only had one statement inside the loop. Because that's what a loop does. A loop says, here's the loop header. The body of the loop is a single statement. That can be a block statement, or it can be a single system.out.println or something like that. So since you just happen to be doing only one thing in there, it happened to work. But I think the comment I usually would make is something along the lines of practice using the opening, closing curly braces, something along those lines. Yeah. Questions about that? So plus plus minus minus makes pretty good sense. Go ahead.
Can we make it to like 2 plus 2?
Oh, so yeah, good question. So you want to say, can I say something like A plus 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 plus? Is that what you want to ask?
Really, but okay.
Should we start with this?
Sure.
Okay. Can I do a super plus plus? Okay. Now, first of all, you see the little red line, so the answer is probably no. But I'm going to ask you why. Why won't this work? Based on what we just talked about, you should be able to tell me why this won't work. What does that part ultimately do?
Increments the original.
Increments the original and boils down to what?
The next one.
Well, this as it's currently written, this will actually boil down to the current value because the plus plus comes after. So this will give me the current value of A, which is 5. Mm-hmm. Then it'll increment A. But what this will boil down to, what I have highlighted here, will boil down to a 5. So now the question is, does that make sense? Does 5 plus plus make sense?
No.
So the plus plus operator operates on variables by taking whatever that variable has, adding 1 to it, and changing that value with variable. In this case, I'm taking the literal value 5 and saying, you're no longer a 5. You're now a 6. Okay, Java is not going to allow you to redefine numbers. That's given information, right? It's like, look, I don't count 1 to 10. I identify by counting by 3s. Something like, is it an identify thing? Yeah, I don't know. It's something along those lines. So the first number is a 1, then the next number is a 3, then it's a 6. That's how you
3 is 5.
3 is 5. Yeah, you map it. Right. Kind of a Unicode. And then you have exceptions. Like, we don't use 7. What, are you crazy? All right, so we're not allowed to change literals. 5 is a number. 5 is a thing that we didn't define. It's just the thing, and it's important it stays as a 5. So saying 5 plus plus is not something that we can do. All right, so you got to think about how things. This goes back to something much earlier in the slide set, talking about how variables or how things are resolved. So as we went through and we resolved this line, it made a lot more sense why it doesn't work. The A++ ultimately resolves to a 5. So now when you look at 5++, now it's like, oh, that doesn't make sense. Make sense? So now getting back to your other question, you want to say, what if I want to add 2 to it? So instead of incrementing by 1, what if I want to increment it by 2? That's what you're asking, right? So we have something called a compound operator. All right, so the compound operators are like plus equals, minus equals, times equals, divide equals. I think there's a mod equals. Yeah, there's the mod equals. There may actually be some other things you can do with that, but the idea here is if I do something like this, if I say int a is equal to 5, and then I say a plus equals 2, for example. This is equivalent to me saying a is equal to a plus 2. It's also equivalent to me saying a plus plus on one line, then a plus plus on another line, incrementing it 2 separate times.
So can you just put like plus equals 1 as well?
You could,
So
yeah.
Why did they just have 2 ways of typing it out?
Yeah. So you could say a plus equals 1, and that would just add 1 to it. Or you could say a plus equals 7 if you want to add 7 to it. Yeah. So this is allows you to be more flexible. Yeah.
I have a question. Can you go through and like use it in Eclipse because I tried to use it.
Yeah, we'll go over it right now. All right, so we start a off at 5. If I say a plus equals 2, like that, and then I print out a, we'll get a 7 there. And then if I say a times equals 3, this will be a 21 here.
Can you use it like in the down in the for loop? Because that's where I tried using it.
So like here?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can say I plus equals 1, something like that. Yeah, it'll work just fine. Yeah. Maybe you threw a semicolon at the end of it or something like that.
I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been happy with that. Or maybe you did something like that. I plus 1. Because you don't have the equal sign, it won't actually set it back. Yeah, so I'd have to see what you did, but yeah, pretty confident it was something you wrote that was not quite where it needed to be. All right, so a starts off as 5, a plus equals 2 will become a 7. We'll print out the 7. A times 3 will be a 21. We'll print out the 21. Yeah.
Can they make like a minus plus? Like you have the plus plus before, plus plus after, something like that.
So you want to do something like
the a plus plus and then plus plus a, can something like.
Well, yeah, you could say so. You can do something like this. Let's see, b is equal to 7. So you can do something like a plus equals plus plus b. Okay, so right off the bat, that's like weird, right? But now you have to take a second and resolve it. Plus plus b does what?
Adds 1 to the
That adds 1 to b immediately, then boils down to it. So what does that boil down to?
8.
An 8. Does that look more friendly now? Or friendlier? Does that look friendlier now? So this will give us an a that is equal to, what is 8 plus 5? 13?
Yes.
Nailed it. Make sense? So practicing with these things is all about, has a lot to do with don't immediately make a judgment of what something is until you think about resolving it. Because sometimes you'll see something that initially looks weird, and spending just a couple of seconds resolving it in your head will make it look a whole lot less weird. Got it? Go ahead.
So okay. So the plus plus a is when you increment
By 1. Yep.
and then boil down. right? So then is there something can do with that, plus minus 2, for example, like you increment first and then you
Yeah.
something like that.
So I'll just take that away from it for a second here.
Does that make
We'll just put it
sense?
in. Yeah, you want to do this.
Yeah, but then
It will boil down. So this changes. What you don't have with compound operators, maybe this is what you're asking.
oh, yeah.
You don't have the ability to either do it before or after.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
you don't have that. You've lost that flexibility.
Okay.
But what you do have is you do have the ability to use the value immediately. So what does this do? This changes the value of A by 8, adds 8 to it, and then boils down to this value. So the compound operators always work order of operation wise as if the plus plus came after at the end. I'm sorry, no, came before. It does the change first, then gives you the value. Does the change first, then gives you the value. So this will give us our 13 here. And then let me take this out. And then we'll see that A is still a 13 here. So 13 and 13. But again, I would say don't get into the habit of writing things like that. Nobody's impressed if you've, put a whole bunch of stuff wrapped inside of a whole bunch of other stuff and then top it off with a little present box with a cockroach in it. Nobody.
You can make juice out.
Just say you can make juice out of it?
So,
No, actually, that's a star for the day because one of my hobbies is taking something that sounds outlandish and then upping it by 1, incrementing it, right? Mm-hmm. She just did it. Okay, we were already about handing a gift box with a cockroach into a monkey, right? And like, okay, well, that's already out there. Now she wants to juice it, including the box, or do we take the box? And that's like pulp. That could have something.
You juice it all together and then strain it.
So what are we straining? This is like right before lunch.
so you can just put it in there with some veggies and make juice for the monkey.
And hide it with the veggies. All right, this is good. All right, so in any case, probably get out of the habit of doing anything in line like that. And only when you get to the point where you're completely comfortable with it and you just know exactly what the result's going to be, could you maybe start foraying into that? But I know exactly how these things work. And 99% of the time, if I want to increment a variable, I'll do something like that. A++ on its own line. And I have complete confidence how they work. Nobody's impressed if you've saved yourself a half a line or something like that. Now you've made your code difficult to read. Okay? All right, questions about any of that stuff? Okay, so next I want to give myself some, we're going to build up strings with asking some questions. So I'm going to create a string S. Here, we'll even throw a little Bible twist in here. So they spell Matthew, TT, like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mark, Luke, John. All right, so first 4 books, New Testament. Right, and I've thrown little commas in between them. So I've separated these guys by a comma, by a delimiter. All right, so now we want to maybe write a function that takes in those parameters, or takes in this thing and splits the string up into its individual pieces and prints them to the screen. Okay, we're printing it, Luke. Okay, not returning it. We are printing it.
I'll keep that in mind.
Right. So we're going to say static void, because we're not returning, we're printing. And we're going to call this guy
Split and print.
maybe print parts. Split and print would have worked too. That might be the next assignment. So we're going to say print parts. And this guy will take in a string as a parameter. Name it whatever you want, but whatever you name it in here is how you'll have to, well, however you name it here is how you'll have to use it in here. So this S and this S don't have anything to do with each other. They live in different scopes. The only time we will connect them to each other is when we happen to pass this S into this function. All right? So now what we want to do is we want to go through this string, and we want to print out the Matthew. Then we want to print out the Mark. Then we want to print out the Luke. We want to print out the John. So I want to process this string, walking through it, knowing that commas delineate the end of a particular string. So we need to, so in general, if we're thinking about the pseudocode for this, what do we need to do? We need to go through our entire string.
Yeah.
Okay, so go through the entire string. Each time through, what are we going to do?
Look at it.
Separation, right?
Well, what do we care about as I'm walking through this string? Okay, so I'm looking at this guy. Is that guy a comma? No. Is this guy a comma? No. Is this guy a comma? No. Well, no. All the stuff I'm highlighting here. What should I be doing with that?
Putting it in an empty string.
I could print it directly if I really wanted to. So that's not an incorrect answer, but probably building up a string with it and then printing the entire string when we're done. So I'm going to add another comment in here. So start with an empty string. Go through the entire string. Each character is either a comma or not. If it's not a comma, what do I do with it?
Concatenate it onto that food.
Yep.
Or onto the empty string.
Concat to the string we are building. If it is a comma, what do I do? Print the string up to this point and set it to empty again. Reset it. All right, so if we think about that, I'm going to have an empty string. Start the beginning. So I'm going to have a loop that's going to go through every character in this string, right? That's what the loop's ultimately going to do. It's going to take I on a voyage between bucket 0, bucket 1, bucket 2, bucket 3, blah, 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 all the way up to bucket s.length minus 1. Each time through, I'm going to ask a question. Is this guy a comma? If it's not a comma, what do? I tack it on to some string I'm building. So I'll capture the M, then I'll capture the A, then I'll capture the T, then I'll capture the T, then I'll capture the H, the E, the W. Now I finally stumble upon a character that is a comma. What do I do when I have a comma? I print the string up to that point, which should be Matthew, and then I set that string to the empty string again, prepared to start capturing my next one. Is that a comma? No, 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 no. I hit a comma. You print the string up to this point. So I'll print out a mark. Then I reset the string to the empty string. Is this a comma? No, 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 no. I hit a comma. What do? I print out the Luke, reset it to the empty string. Is this a comma? No, 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 no. Okay. Now I've run to the end of the string. I never hit another comma. So when my loop is done, once the loop is over, I should have, I guess in a situation where you had no, we can assume there's going to be at least one element in your string, because you could have a situation where if you literally pass at the empty string, you would never hit a comma, and then you would also never have anything to print. But it already has an empty string in it, so that'd be fine. You wouldn't break anything. So once the loop is over, I should have one last string to print. So print it. And you don't have to zero it out again because your function's over at that point. Does that make sense? What we're doing there? All right, so I'm going to take this stuff here, I'll throw it up on Slack. It was from Luke.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll put this in 250. There we go. Paste that in there. We're going to call this guy, I don't know what.
Homework 5.
Homework 5 start?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so then your homework is to write this function right here, print parts, that does all this stuff we talked about. And the next Bible homework is already up. So this is, you said this is program 5? Yeah, program 5. All right, so I will see everybody on Tuesday. Unless you're in my class later today.
Yeah, because you want to start out.
I'm just going to say C homework, C program 5 start on Slack. Otherwise, it's going to be spaced really funny on here.
Okay. Yeah. I know. I just.
It took you that long?
Yeah, I know.
Do you know how to change the zoom on Eclipse? Because during class, like, is it really? Thank you. That makes sense how I got hit. Because like all of a sudden, like my screen was just zoomed in a lot. I was like, I don't know what's going on.
You already finished?
Range 22.
That's how that works.
So.
Oh, I've seen this thing.
You're gonna show her, right?
What?
Oh no.
She's gonna show you.
Oh no.